Pittsburgh Sportsline. We've just lived an entire week without the Steelers. I'm sure we'll find some other things to talk about. I'm here today. I'm Mike Migliore. I'm here with Chip Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Al Levine, the talking machine. Down at the end there, we start out every week with our segment, What's on Your Mind? Al, let's start down there. What's on your mind?
Well, since the Steelers aren't playing, I'm not going to talk about the Steelers.
Thank God.
But I wanted to give out our phone number, 412-831-3304. Give us a call. We have open lines. And speaking of open lines, I have a couple friends that I run into the other day. One of my good friends, Chief, from the Post-Gazette. I met him out at the Meadows with his cousin, Harry. And we have quite the experience to talk about, but I didn't know they were watching the show. And they said, could you get an autograph of Smoking Jim Frazier? Because we like him. And then they said, what's the story with this Magic Mike? He comes up with so many great things. The Chief and Harry were so ecstatic about this. Harry's out in the North Hills. He watches online. So go to YouTube, Pittsburgh Sportsline, and you can see us there. And they just love the show. And then they said, who's this guy who was showing up on your odd-numbered shows? And he showed up on the last one with number 13. And I said, that's Chip Hayner. He's one of our best substitute hosts, semi-regular. So they're big fans of our show. And I just wanted to tell you, I'm getting a lot of good feedback throughout the community. I've run into different people, and they've also said they like the conversation on the show. So again, I said, call in, 412-831-3304. And I'll get into some of the other stuff on my mind, Mike, but I figured I'd throw out some compliments to you fellas here.
Yeah, we're always up for an infomercial. No problem. Jim, what's on your mind?
Hey, thanks, Al. What's on my mind is actually wearing a shirt. This is James Harrison's high school, where he went to high school in Akron. Before he got kicked out. But anywho, Tebow is on my mind. Listen, everybody's talking about the Denver Broncos loss because of Tim Tebow. Had nothing to do with it. It's Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday weekend, so the Denver Broncos defense played non-violently. Hey, listen, John Elway said in a press conference that Tim Tebow reminds him of himself. I took a lot of heat by saying that Tim Tebow reminded me of Steve Young. Now the great John Elway is not only believes that Tebow is a clone of himself, he's going to come out of his suit and start working with Tim Tebow. So look for Tebow to go to the Pro Bowl next year as a quarterback.
Wow.
We'll get into that later, Chip.
Chip, what's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind tonight, Mike, is I've been reading a lot in the papers lately about the Penn State alumni and how they are starting to make inroads to getting rid of the Board of Trustees, and then they talk about how unjustly that Joe Paterno was treated. Well, in the first place, in regards to Joe Paterno, you know, he's battling cancer and he's in a battle for his life, and my thoughts and my prayers go out to him and his family, and and I hope he beats it. But as far as Joe Paterno being treated unfairly, I don't necessarily agree with the Penn State alum when they say that. The situation that existed, it still has not been proven whether Jerry Sandusky is guilty or not. That'll be adjudicated in due time. But, there was accusations that were made in regards to him as far back as 1998, and nobody had done anything. And again, in 2002, more accusations were made, and still nothing was done about it. And, Joe Paterno himself says, I wish I would have done more. And, he could have done more, and he should have done more, and he didn't. And that's why I feel that he was treated the way he should have been treated, because this situation should have been nipped 12 or 13 years ago and should have never gotten into the year 2010.
Well, I'm not so sure I agree with all that. I believe that, once you tell the people above you in your chain of command what's going on, then it's up to them to move it on. But everybody has their own ideas on that. I said on the show last week that I believe the Super Bowl was going to be played on last weekend between San Francisco and New Orleans. Personally, I thought New Orleans would win that game and go on to win the Super Bowl. But San Francisco 49ers look very, very good. They have a great defense, and they have a pretty respectable offense also. So I'm looking for San Francisco to beat the Giants and to go on and beat either New England Patriots or possibly Baltimore Ravens and having an all Harbaugh or Harbaugh Brothers Super Bowl.
Who picked that one?
I just picked that one. That's who picked it.
I guess you didn't listen to the show last week. I had to hear this guy tell me that constantly.
Can we go to a break? Because it looks like Al and Jim would like to be alone together. Maybe we can help them out. Give them a little privacy here. Actually, I think we've got some pretty good games to watch this weekend, and I think we're gonna have a pretty decent Super Bowl. No matter which teams get into it, we've got four good teams remaining, 4 exciting teams to watch. I think it's going to be a lot of fun from here on out. Guys, what do you think about the Super Bowl?
Well, my thoughts is I think we're going to see a repeat of, I believe it was Super Bowl 42. And I believe the Giants and the Patriots are going to go at it. And I think what's going to win the day is, again, going to be the Giants' defense. Last week I predicted that the Giants would take it to the Packers, and they beat them soundly. And they beat them soundly with defense. And, Eli Manning has enough experience, and he's been there before, that he can win the big games. And I think right now that the hottest team in football is the New York Giants, and I'm picking the New York Giants to win it all.
And before I get my prediction, I'll just go back to the Penn State thing a little bit. Magic, I agree with you, because don't forget now, Jerry Sandusky, who I believe is innocent, I'm hoping he's innocent, but Jerry Sandusky was sitting in the president's luxury box a week before he got arrested when Joe Paterno won his 409th game, and he also went to the Nittany Lion Club. So there's a whole lot of blame to go around. What they did to Joe Paterno, I think they should have let him coach the rest of the season. But in terms of, I think the Giants are tailor-made for the San Francisco 49ers in this regard. Now, they did a great job against the Green Bay Packers, a passing team. But if you look at the Giants' front four, and they're very impressive, but their front four is light in the butt. Them guys is more or less four defensive ends playing on front line. San Fran likes to run the football, so San Francisco will gain a lot of yards running. Time of possession will be there. And I think Jim Harbaugh is the best coach to come into the National Football League since Jimmy Johnson.
Wow. I got to disagree with you on some of those points there, Smoking Jim. You've been convincing me of a lot of things, but one, I wanted to give a compliment to Mike, because I normally don't do this, but his team, Houston, that he picked earlier in the year, this was about 3/4 of the way through the season.
Sure did.
They had a rookie, and like Chip was explaining off air to me, that these rookies just get a little crazy there, and they start throwing the ball in a double, triple coverage, and if Yates doesn't throw those interceptions, which he didn't have to. He could have taken a sack even. He could have thrown the ball away. Baltimore may not have won the game. So, I mean, that's an interesting thing. And a little bit of the age was showing up on Smoking Jim's favorite player. He dropped an interception earlier. I didn't text you about that one, because that would have definitely been a game changer there. And he did miss a tackle going into the end zone. I don't want to pick on him too much, because at his age, he did close on a couple plays and made some super plays there to knock some guys down and out. But Baltimore's a little suspect, just like I believe San Francisco. And I got to agree with Chip that it looks like New England and the Giants again. And right now, Brady has a chip on his shoulder, which he plays phenomenal with that chip. He's like, so using my no pun intended with Chip. But I do like to do that, as you know. So, and I got to go with you. Who's going to win the game? I'm thinking New England. So I don't agree with you 100%, Chip. But you brought up some great points there.
Well, I don't have a chip on my shoulder. I do have one to my left side here. But
no pun intended.
I'll say this. Jim has texted us often and has often come on here and said that he thinks Ray Lewis is the best player in the history of the NFL. He doesn't really mean National Football League. He means Ray's new front lawn. And probably in that particular area, Ray is the best player, at least for now. It seems that the national broadcasters, they kind of like to pick up on some things that maybe you don't really know. But if you watch that game at all, I'm sure you heard, I don't know, 50 or 60 times that Ray Lewis and Ray, the running back, are really good friends.
Ray Rice.
Yeah, Ray Rice. Yeah, Ray Rice, Ray Lewis, good friends. They're really good friends. They're good friends. They're really good. Shut up, guys. You don't have to say it once. Right?
It sunk in, though. I learned that after 42 times.
You know, Phil Simms, they should just muzzle him to start with. I mean, it's painful watching any football game that he's announcing.
Well, actually, I always have a reason. And the reason that I got into broadcasters is I actually watched the hockey game the other night, or actually the other afternoon, Sunday afternoon, between the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And when the Penguins were up 3-0, Bob Airey, who was a great hockey player, the city owes him 2 Stanley Cups. Bob Airey was an outstanding hockey player. But just because you can play doesn't mean you can talk about it. And Bob Airey, when they were up 3-0, said, boy, for all intents and purposes, this game's over. And 5 minutes later, the score was tied 3-3. Sometimes, Bob, you just need to settle down a little bit and think about what you're trying to say.
I watched that game, and since you segued into hockey, Mike, I like that because I have a couple points I wanted to bring up.
Imagine that.
Well, that's why I'm here. Add a little point or two. But anyhow, Sid Crosby, there sounded like there was a little dissension or possibly discord on the team, but it really wasn't that. They had said that just missing Sidney Crosby and a 6-game losing streak sort of hurt them. And you know yourself, you guys have played sports and you've watched enough sports, that the only thing that heals things are wins. Because rarely do you hear anything about a missing captain or somebody thinks we should have a substitute captain. But isn't it ironic how Sid shows up and they win a couple games? And look at Malkin. He got lost in the shuffle, like Mike mentioned before the show. He scores a natural hat trick, and what do we hear? We hear about Sidney. So you got to hats off to Malkin there. Give him some credit, and the team's coming on, doing a lot better here with scoring some of these goals. So we just got to get people healthy, and Letang's skating this week, so hopefully he'll play before the All-Star game next week.
Well, Al, you actually, it's surprising you bring up an interesting point, but you
surprising to who?
You mentioned about the supposed dissension on the team. It's like I've told you and everybody else for as long as I've been talking. There's nothing in the world worse than a sports writer with nothing to write. So we get the newspaper again writing that there's a dissension on the team. People were complaining because Crosby's not playing. The Penguins are talking about voting for a new captain, none of which is true. And in order to kind of help disprove that, every one of the Penguins came out to practice with a C on his jersey. Well, except for Malkin, who came out with a K, which I guess in Russia is pretty much the same as a C. But it kind of showed that they were all in support of their team captain, and they're not trying to rush Sidney Crosby back. If the guy's not able to play, he's not able to play. Whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whatever the reasons are, if he's not ready to play, then he's just not ready to play. This week, Al mentioned Chris Letang. Chris Letang's supposed to play on Thursday against the Rangers, and Letang was having an outstanding season when he got hurt, and now he's back. Hopefully, fall right back into playing the same way that he was. I believe that with or without Sidney Crosby, the Pittsburgh Penguins are a Stanley Cup contender. In my estimation, are a Stanley Cup favorite. I believe that they will win the Cup. All they have to do is keep playing the way they are. Guys like Malkin, guys like James Neal, who couldn't buy a goal last year after the Penguins picked him up, and now tied for the lead in goals. Jenny Malkin, one point behind Sedin for the scoring race. The Penguins have a lot of great hockey players, and like I always say, Marc-Andre Fleury, the best goalie in the league. I have no problem saying right now that I believe they'll win the Stanley Cup this year.
What about Jordan Stahl?
Jordan Stahl was out for 4 to 6 weeks. He's going to be gone for a long time.
That hurts.
Malkin right now is playing as well as he played the year he won the Art Ross. And I think he's averaging like 1.3 or almost 1.4 points a game. And if he just can take charge like he did on Sunday afternoon, and he's a stud that can do that, he can carry the Penguins a long way. And whether Sidney comes back or not, I have to tend to agree with Mike that they can be a team that could be considered a favorite. They've gone through a rough patch, and I think that galvanizes a team. you either succumb to the pressure or you stand up to it. And I think we're seeing a turnaround right now.
I agree with you there. And what I was bringing up is this media creates this controversy. It isn't the players. They know what's going on. They know how Sid is. They know his work ethic, like we've talked about. How would you like to be a young man in the best shape of your life and you can't play because you can't stand up at times, or you're dizzy, or you're throwing up? Letang just had an interview where he was saying he had to stay in bed because he was actually throwing up and he was dizzy. That's how bad off he was, and now he's coming back. So the severity of Crosby's injury, I don't even question that. And the heart of these players, again, I keep saying each week, they're the toughest athletes in any sport alive to keep going out there and doing that. And we do have a great team. We do have to get past some of these injuries. But I was wondering what you guys thought about the slight that James Neal got for not being on the All-Star team. You know, I think more people should be upset about that he wasn't chosen to be on the team. You know, with all the goals he scored and just what he's meant to our team, too.
Well, what about Marc-Andre Fleury? I mean, Mike's over here touting him. And if he isn't one of the best goaltenders in the league, I don't know who is, and how Neal and Fleury could be left off the team.
You're right.
I just don't understand that. You know, like who selected the team?
Well,
I think they changed some of the rules, didn't they, Mike?
Yeah, well, first off, anytime that the fans vote for who's on the All-Star team, that's a little bit crazy. It becomes a popularity contest. It wasn't too long ago that the Penguins hosted the All-Star game, and the fans down at the Mellon Arena, or the fans here in Pittsburgh, stuffed the ballot boxes so that 8 Penguins made the team. The Ottawa Senators fans did the same thing this year. Maybe somebody should take a step back and look and say, okay, well, this guy's leading the league in goals. Maybe he should be playing, and they should insert him onto the team too. I am sure that if there is an injury or if there needs to be some kind of substitution before the team is actually set, that James Neal will get a call. As far as Fleury, again, I believe he's the best there is. He might not have the best record at this point in the season, and maybe that's why somebody else gets the nod. Or again, maybe it's just because it is a popularity contest, and the people in New York vote for their players, and the people in Chicago vote for their players, and some cities just have a lot more fans, a lot more people than Pittsburgh does.
Good point.
So anytime again that the fans are voting, then that's what you're going to get. But in the second tier of deciding who's going on, when the coaches and managers or whichever start picking the players, well, in that case, that's when James Neal and probably Fleury should have made the team. So, that's it. But personally, I don't think either one of them are going to mind too much in June when they're holding that cup over their head.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I second that emotion.
The city of Pittsburgh could use another parade in June.
Well, we need that because look at some of the depression in Pittsburgh here. We have, I can't believe I'm even saying this, the Pitt basketball team's 0-6 in Big East play. It's like a super down year for the Pitt Athletics, Smoking Jim. Some of this you predicted there. I don't want your autograph this week. Too much negativity. But that's another shocker with, they did play a little better against Syracuse last night, although it was hard for me to watch the game, and I must admit I didn't watch the whole game. So they need some help.
Well, it looks right now that team isn't going to even have a chance to make it to the NCAA tournament. And if they continue to play the way they've been, they're not even going to make the NIT.
They may not even make the Big East tournament.
They have to, but everybody makes. San Diego State will make it next year.
And I think what's going to hurt the basketball team is the same thing that's hurting the football team. I think that you're going to see a decline in the level of talent of recruits that's coming in. The quarterback linebacker for Upper St. Clair wanted to go to Pitt his whole life. Just
at Dakota.
Yeah, just decommitted to Pitt. Now he's going to Arizona to join Todd Graham. So we're going to see a lot of defections in the recruit level, talent in the recruits.
I don't know how a recruit could possibly want to follow Todd Graham anywhere, but that's just my opinion. I mean,
Sunshine.
Todd Graham's got no integrity whatsoever, and I like nothing more than to see him dry up in the Arizona sun and blow away.
But everybody knows jump back into the championship a little bit again. Everybody knows that I believe Ray Lewis is the greatest player in NFL history, and I'm real surprised that the talking machine is not picking Baltimore. Is it because Flacco is wearing your mustache?
Well, what happened is that shocked me because I'm a Pittsburgh guy, and I'm glad you brought that up, my straight man there. But did you notice while I was watching the game, they have all these Fu Manchus going on, which I've had for a long time, so this is another infomercial. But it was shocking. But even some of the pretty girls out in the stands had purple mustaches and black mustaches with the Fu Manchu. So it's not a goatee, it's a Fu Manchu. But no, I am getting a little disappointed in, like, Flacco was under siege and he couldn't make anything happen. And the great quarterbacks, even when they're under siege like that, are able to make something happen. And Jim, he didn't do that. And that's what sort of has me worried about going to the next level, which they have to do. He does have some receivers that can catch the ball, but you have to get it to them. And the defense did, keep them in the game. But they are a little suspect there with some of the plays. With a better quarterback, what happens?
And what worries me more so than the offensive side of the ball is Ed Reed is not very healthy. Ed Reed is a ball hawk, and he may be even a better safety than Troy Polamalu.
Oh, Ed Reed is one of if not the premier safety in the league. And Ed Reed and Ray Lewis will both go to the Hall of Fame one day. And I believe those two will be first ballot Hall of Famers without any question. But, looking at their defense last week, they were holding on, and their offense just couldn't move the ball. And I think the weakest link that they have is Joe Flacco. I don't think Joe Flacco has the ability to win the big game. And I think what will ultimately happen, if the game is on the line and he has to make a play, he's going to make the big turnover like he has, in the past.
Yeah, unless he can surprise us. I mean, that's the only thing. I'm hopeful, but I don't think that's happening. Again, look at our man Eli. I just got a text from somebody, a brother-in-law, who said to send this to Chip. When you talk about elite, an elite quarterback, what's the first three letters, Chip?
Eli. And
Thank you.
And I do, and I've hitched my wagon to the Giants, and succeed or fail, I'm gonna back them. But I honestly think that Eli's going to put another ring on his finger this year.
He's engaged.
Yeah. He's going to get engaged to the Lombardi Trophy.
Oh, my.
And really, Eli, it's good that he spells his name with three letters because he's the third best quarterback in that 2004 class. Big Ben number 1, San Diego Chargers quarterback number 2, and Eli number 3. That ain't a bad class to be in at all.
How many have rings, though, my friend?
Well, and he's ahead of Matt Schaub. Matt Schaub was in that class, although he was third-round pick. Buffalo Bills picked a bum in the first round, J.P. Loftman. I thought he would be a bust, and he is.
Well, Al, between those three quarterbacks, there are 3 rings.
Good job, man.
Thanks for asking.
Good job, man.
The best part is I wanted him to just say that Cowers Man Rivers did not have a ring. That was my only point to it. I know how many rings are out there. Big Ben has 2 also.
Phillip Rivers this year was a major disappointment. Yeah. Everybody thought that this was going to be his coming out party this year, that he was going to rise to the elite level, and he just didn't have it this year. I mean, the Chargers' problems were, there was a lot of problems there, but he was one of them. He wasn't one of the shining examples.
Well, let me ask you this, Chip.
Sure.
Here's something that nobody brings up, and if you guys think about this, why in the world? One of the greatest draft classes was when they was able to trade swap Phillip Rivers for Eli Manning, who him and his dad didn't want him to be in San Diego.
Right.
They ended up picking up an additional first-round pick, so they got LT, which was a great pick. And in the second round, they got Drew Brees. Why in the world will you have Drew Brees on your football team that practice with Drew Brees for 2 years and then all of a sudden say we draft another quarterback?
Injury.
That's crazy.
Injury.
He had a labrum
shoulder.
injury, and they thought that he wasn't going to have the arm strength, and Drew Brees overcame an injury that would have ended a lot of people's careers. You know, and that's what I believe. If you check back, but I
No,
do
it's
believe
true,
he had
Chip.
a labrum injury, and so they had Rivers, and they were like, well, okay, we're going to flip the coin. Which one are we going to keep? And well, obviously they guessed wrong, and it was
Well,
to
their
New
decision,
Orleans'
though,
benefit.
Part of the problem on their decision is the heart of the man. You know, we bring up people's hearts and their winning attitudes. And the workout that he went through to strengthen his arm, I saw that in a health magazine. They were talking about, look at this quarterback. You know, he's going to New Orleans, and they were interviewing him in this article. And just his workout, I don't know how he went through it. He practically killed himself to get in the shape so he could throw again. Because that's how shaky it was that he would never throw again.
Was it a Belco magazine?
No, no, it wasn't. And there were no other enhanced drugs because look at him. Is he even 6 foot tall and 180 or 90? You're a scout now.
I found it on Barry Bonds' coffee table.
And his head has not increased by 5, I think. It didn't increase.
You rub that clear or the cream on that shoulder, man. You can throw all day long. Man.
Drew Brees' injury did end a lot of people's careers. Most of them were cornerbacks or defensive coordinators. Most of their careers are all over.
Recently, he's ended their careers.
Oh, yeah, and to tip your hat to the season that Drew Brees had this year, a year like no other quarterbacks had. I mean, Brady has the record for the most touchdown passes, but the defenses he shredded this year was just it was amazing. I know the changes in the rules have made it so you can't. The next thing they're going to do for the rules to increase offenses, you're not going to be allowed to tackle the ball carrier. But I mean, but you got to give him his credit because he had a phenomenal season this year.
How close do you think that we are to a 6,000-yard passer? We're not that far away.
Next year.
Yeah.
Next year, not a problem. It could happen because look at even the rules. Even during the Packers game, Chip and I were talking earlier that look what happened. They called a penalty when Rodgers got tackled and said it was a blow to his head. It was only a blow to his head after he got tackled under his shoulder. He fell into the other defensive lineman that was laying there, basically, and they give a penalty like that. And that brings me up to one of my pet peeves about who they want to win some of these games, which it shouldn't be that way. And the referees should not make an impact like that on a lot of these plays. So that's one of the points I want to make.
I don't think that's a conspiracy theory kind of thing with the referees. I just think that the referees, they should go to full-time referees instead of part-time. The refereeing that I've seen in the NFL this year has just been, it's terrible. And, they had a fumble, okay? When they reviewed the play, and it was clearly a fumble, and they didn't reverse it. I don't know how they do that.
Well, that's part of what we were bringing up last week, too, with you have 3 or 4 different calls that are overturned. How can that keep happening? They're overturned. So, I mean, it's good we have replay.
Well, first, I'd like to get back to who the teams that they want to have win. Who are they? What teams? Who do you think teams pick, or who picks the teams?
Well, here's a little
win,
theory. Sometimes these teams that have won a lot of games, 13, 14 games, or they're in big cities, New York, wherever, that they sometimes have a little slant to their calls because then they get overturned if there's replay. Or then there's a controversy that the NFL official office comes out and says that was a bad call. Some of them have gone against us, and you just look back over the teams that have done that. And that's where some of this comes about. Not that it's a conspiracy, but there are certain things that do happen, whether it's coincidence or not, who knows?
Well, I know the folks in Indianapolis did not want Green Bay fans to come again. Cheapest fans of all time. All they do is pack a cooler full of cheese and bottled water and don't spend any money.
No, beer. They drink beer.
Live in their car, yeah. Live in their car. Don't spend any money at the Super Bowl. So
well, they bring their own beer, too. From
they don't have any
Milwaukee's
money
best.
to spend. They're paying for the team. They own
yeah,
the
that's
team.
right. That's right.
Well, where were you guys?
That's right.
So what do you
They
think
were
about
selling stock. Where were you guys on getting that $100 share of stock?
$250.
So
$100.
what do you think about the Colts cleaning house? I mean, they wiped out everybody, the general managers, the coach, and pretty surprising that in 1 year they can get rid of a group of people that were responsible for so many years of success.
eighth wonder in the world is how their coach made it through the whole season. Caldwell made it through the whole season without getting axed.
Manning.
Hey, never underestimate Irsay. One time he got rid of a whole city.
Yeah, that's right.
In the middle of the night.
Moved from
Wasn't
Baltimore,
that
In the middle of the
Baltimore
night.
to Indianapolis like that.
Well,
Boom.
the city could be coming
That's
back.
it.
Baltimore Ravens, former Baltimore
Fired
Colts
the whole
fans
city.
could be coming to Indy.
That might happen. No, it is getting serious. It is shocking that you get rid of everybody after one bad year. I mean, is Peyton going to come back? That's another question.
Well, you have to. If you're Peyton Manning, you think about this. He's played football for X number of years, and he's had neck fusion surgery. Now, the guy has done everything that can be done in the game. And what else does he have left to prove? And could the next hit that he gets be the one that makes him, a quadriplegic? I mean, I would have to seriously evaluate if I was Peyton Manning whether it would be worth it to come back.
I think he's debating that 28 million times a night.
Yeah, but you know what?
Come March or something?
He's got enough money to get lost and forget about everybody. The 28 million. I mean, he'll make enough in endorsements for the rest of his life that he'll never have to worry.
No
about
way.
anything.
Not even Al's very good friend, Mark Cuban, has enough money to say, I don't need 28 million more. But it just doesn't work like that.
I'm getting shots on here left and
But
as far as the refereeing and the calling the game, I believe that there should be a referee review or umpire review, referee review, depending on what sport it is, at the end of every season, maybe even halfway through the season, to look at each of them and say, okay, you know what, you made too many bad calls, we're going to have to let you go or bring in somebody else. Of course, whatever union, the umpires union or the referees union or whatever will go hysterical over that, and they'll want to go on strike. But I think less of unions than I do the Steelers. So I'd say go ahead and let them go. Let them go if they're not doing well. But you need to be, if the guys are out there and there's no review for what they're doing, they pretty much do whatever they want.
No, I think there is a review process, and it's called a CBA. When they sign a CBA, they usually include some provisions for reviews. And I think they have it, but you have to watch when they have peer reviews, because that's what happens. After so many years, they're all peers of one another, and they sort of look over that and forget about it. But they can have these restrictions, like you're saying, even with the union contract, which they do have. And you just change these people, or you set them back a little where they don't referee as many games. And then they get extra training, and they get to maybe sit in the booth and watch some of these games, where then they'll see how they can correct their calls.
Well, here's a thought, and this is a question that just kind of popped into my head, and I see referees as being not decisive about making their calls. I think they're afraid to make calls because they're afraid of the call being overturned and reflecting badly on them. And do you think possibly that could be part of the reason why? Because if you watch the games, the refs almost never blow the whistle. It used to be, somebody get in the grass and they blow the whistle, and now they're waiting until the players are coming off the sidelines to come in before they blow the whistle. They're almost in the huddle before they blow the whistle.
Yeah, well, it could be because you have this replay, and they have to tighten it up. Either review certain plays, like now they have the end zone whenever the touchdown's scored. So that may take some of the pressure off of these referees. But you do have more referees watching a game now than ever before, and they're still hesitant, like you're saying. So that needs to be addressed with the NFL when they do meet and decide on more of the no fun league rules that they come out with. So we need some more defense and give the defensive players a break. Let's get some happy medium with how football should be played here too. And I go back to Smoke and Jim, that these guys are like gladiators. They're just pieces of meat. So if we go with that mentality, Peyton Manning shouldn't play anymore, because why should you risk your life unless you want to?
And I tell you what, a play that decided the game in the New Orleans game was when the strong safety knocked out running back Pierre Thomas.
Yeah.
And that hurt, even though Sproles had a great game receiving-wise, but Pierre Thomas was the running back, and he was knocked out before he even hit the ground. And now they recovered that fumble. Saints was getting ready to go on to score a touchdown. So if you allow the defense to do their job, a lot of these guys would be ineffective offensively. Some of them would get maybe alligator arms like Mike Wallace.
Well, that leads to a good point. And they're trying to, what is it? They're trying to get the violence out of the sport, and and people say that football is a contact sport, and I've always believed that it's not a contact sport; that football is a collision sport, and people get hurt playing football. That's why they're given all the pads that they've given, and we've just got to accept that. I mean, we can't. You're creating more problems by over officiating things than letting the players play, and so. It's a shame that people are going to get knocked out, but if they don't want to play, they're out there willfully. If they don't want to play, they can choose to do something else.
Well, I feel if you have rules, just enforce the rules. And then let the pieces fall where they do. Let the players play the game like they should. And my thing is, coming from a family where my dad was a referee, you shouldn't be part of the game. That's how simple it is. That's how I was brought up. So if you follow some basic rules, the referee should just call it. If something is so egregious, then you make the call. If you break a rule, it's like anything else. Do you go through stop signs? Do you go through a red light? You're not supposed to. But if there's a policeman there, you're not going through that. So, I mean, that's why you have the rules, and we just get too crazy with all of this stuff. And that's why I'm suspect of some of the reasons on why these guys make calls or they don't make calls. Find out where they're from. Find out what cities they're from. Different things like that. These coincidences shouldn't happen. But go by the rules and have somebody oversee that has some teeth to be able to do something.
And find out if these referees got an offshore account anywhere.
NBA.
Okay. So then you're saying, Al, that if we would go back to Super Bowl 40, it really was the referees that helped the Steelers win that Super Bowl?
I'm going to do one of your heroes, Ronald Reagan, said, I just can't seem to remember that. I have no recall. No recollection of that, sir.
Senator.
No, I didn't want
Senator.
I just threw that in because I'm talking to you. You understand.
Well, referees have been blowing calls as long as the NFL's been playing football. I mean, Al Davis cried about them in the 70s, and Bum Phillips cried about them. When the Steelers played the Houston Oilers, and it just seems that the referees are more involved in games, in the outcome in games now than they should be. And I agree with Al's point. A well officiated game, you don't even know that the official's there, and that has not been the case anymore.
So Chip and Al agree that the referees have been coddling the Steelers since the 70s. He said, I understand. I mean, I think that's pretty cool because in the 70s I used to like them. Wait, let me ask something just a little bit off the wall. Do you think that, I mean, as you're watching these teams, that certain teams have certain, personalities or abilities or whatever, that sometimes you can look at them and say, okay, this is how this thing's going to go? The reason I ask that is because when I was watching Denver and New England, when it was 14-0 New England, I knew that game was over. Mm-hmm. When I was watching San Francisco and New Orleans, when it was 17-0 San Francisco, I had no doubt in my mind that New Orleans was going to win that game. Because you just know that this is the kind of team that is going to come back off of that, and this is the kind of team that's not.
Well, sometimes that reflects in some of the players' attitudes. You can tell when somebody's they've got that look on them that they're beat. They've got no fight left in that dog. And I agree with you. When I was watching the New Orleans game against San Francisco and they went down, they were like, you know what, no panic. We're going to go back to work. And they fought their way back into the game. And in the last 4 minutes of that game, I'm still amazed. I mean, the way both those teams took the ball up and down the field, and if anybody would have told me that Alex Smith would have taken the ball the length of the field to score a winning touchdown with 1:25, 1:30 left, I would have bet a fair amount of money against that. And I was very, very surprised to see that happen, and it made for great TV.
Were you surprised he was the first player picked overall?
Well, the problem is he was so maligned for 6 years, though, Smoking Jim. What did he have, 7 different offensive coordinators?
Next year, maybe 8.
Maybe his 8th one, so we'll see what happens. But again, he is a good athlete, and you don't know about the heart of the player. And again, he showed it. A 28-yard run, and then they were trying to review the play saying he stepped out of bounds. I mean, he knew where that line was.
Yeah, but, I think maybe, the success of Alex Smith is that somebody finally designed a system that he could succeed in instead of trying to jam that square peg into a round hole. Exactly. I mean, I think people were trying to do with him what he wasn't capable of doing, and I'm surprised that he stuck it out as long as he did, and he's getting his rewards now.
Well, he kept coming back for that paycheck, but I'm surprised that people kept allowing him to get an opportunity to play. And you're exactly right, Chip. Most guys, as David Carr, most guys don't get an opportunity to keep year after year playing as poorly as Alex Smith did, to finally get an opportunity to play with the best coach to come in the National Football League, Jim Harbaugh, since Jimmy Johnson.
Again.
So Jimmy Johnson's the standard?
I don't know what he's scoring this week. I got to take the autograph back. That's not fair. Jimmy Johnson, did he coach Dallas? Oh, I'm a Steeler fan. Now I'm not a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, but he did have a nice team or two. And what happened to his quarterback? I listened to him on TV, Troy Aikman, and we had a little discussion about concussions. He had 8 legitimate ones that they reported. How many did Troy Aikman actually have? Because at times there, he does get a little lost on the air there, Smoking Jim.
Well, when Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin retired, all of a sudden he got concussion problems. Troy Aikman was one of the first quarterbacks you could never touch. You breathe on Troy Aikman, he was either going to miss 5 games or complain about it. But, all these guys, once they're great players around them, starts retiring. The Novaceks, the Michael Irvin, the Emmitt Smiths, then all of a sudden Aikman, who still had a lot more years left, all of a sudden he bows out from the National Football League.
Okay, so I hate to have to do this, but what's life like without the Steelers now?
Well, I'm thinking about the cap. They're $25 million over the cap.
Yeah,
the Steelers. Right. They are. Do some research. Yeah. Come on, my scout friend. They're $25 million over, so there's going to be a bunch of changes there, and they do have to sign some of these players. So there's going to be a different team out there next year.
And you're telling me that Carson Palmer in the middle of the season can go to Oakland and take his whole $100 million contract, and they are well under the cap, but the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have average payroll, salary cap goes up every year, now you want to tell me that they're $25 million over the salary cap? Impossible.
Oh, this is a fact. You'll see that I'm right. Just like I made the call last week that James Neal would play in the hockey game, and nobody believed me, but he played in the hockey game as we were speaking.
The Pittsburgh Steelers,
the Steelers are over the cap.
The Steelers leak what they want to so they can justify doing what they're getting ready to do.
Well, you know more of the inside info.
And they're successful at what they do, and they've got a formula that works. And you know what? I'm not gonna sweat about it. We'll see what happens. Yes, there's going to be changes made, and that's life of the NFL.
But just assuming that the Pittsburgh Steelers, who do the right things, even though their offensive line kills their quarterbacks every year, if they are $25 million over the cap, which I don't believe that they are, but just assuming they are, what changes would you make for them to get underneath the cap next year? Who would you cut?
Like you said, they're leaking stuff out because they're going to do what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And the first thing they're going to do is name Hines Ward. That he's going to be gone. Aaron Smith's contract is going to be gone. Probably Casey Hampton's contract is going to be gone. I would get
Willie Colon.
Chris Hogue for sure.
Willie Colon, maybe $6.5 million.
I'm
what
sure
about
there's going to be. I'm sure Max Starks will be bouncing down at Altar Bar again.
Well, it sounds like now they're going to be $50 million under the cap.
Bingo. That's what it's about. I'm telling you, that was just a little tip for you.
It's hard to say what changes they're going to make unless you look at the numbers. We don't have access to that information, and they'll put the
just
pieces in the puzzle
speculation
together.
for you. I wanted you to hear it first. Sometimes I can't just pick the favorites like the Packers and Steelers and Steeler Nation here. So I'll throw out something else like that. But those are the changes that are going to happen. But one point I wanted to bring up is, what do you think about other Steelers making the Hall of Fame this year? Do you have any thoughts on, this Darmani Dawson and, even Jack Butler from the past? there was a guy and started a scouting system and everything else that they've used and had success with.
Well, yeah, I said when DeMonte Dawson retired, even though he was one of the greatest, if not the greatest center of all time, I said he'd never make the Hall of Fame, and he's proven me right. I think if anybody goes in this year from the Steeler class, could be Jack Butler and the old timers, but Jerome Bettis he has the numbers that will put him worthy of the Hall of Fame. What's hurting him right now is it's probably going to come down between him and Curtis Martin, a guy who's from here in the city of Pittsburgh, Alderdice High School, that could walk down the street with nobody even know him, even though he's the third leading rusher in NFL history.
I vote for him.
I believe that Bettis will get in because he does have the numbers, and not only that, but because he's very popular with the sports writers, who are the people that vote to see who gets in or out of the Hall of Fame. It's kind of a disgrace that it works that way, but that's the way it is. Curtis Martin certainly has the numbers to get in, and probably should. The problem with DeMonte Dawson, who definitely should be in the Hall of Fame because he's the second best center of all time, and the first best center of all time is already in there. Yeah. The problem is that with a center, you don't have numbers. There's no real stats for a center. So the only people that vote for a center are the people that saw him play, and his time is starting to move on because a lot of these new sports writers and stuff did not see him play. It's unfortunate that there are certain positions like offensive linemen that there are no real stats. You can say your quarterback wasn't sacked as many times or whatever, but those are all negative stats. If you're a center and the quarterback's been sacked 5 times, it's a negative, not a positive. DeMonte Dawson is
unfortunately he never won a championship, and usually that seems to be if a guy was outstanding in his career. If he was played on a championship team, that usually will tip the scales in his favor, and that's one of the things that works against him, I think.
Yeah, yesterday's heroes are soon forgotten, and like you said, Mike, it's a shame that DeMonte Dawson's not in. The only center in the history of the National Football League that consistently get out on a sweep, lead the sweep, great athlete, did great things, but like you said, these guys that they're not going back watching the film, studying that era, so I didn't think he'd get in. And I'm going out on a limb right now, and I'm saying, mark the tape, Hines Ward will never get in the Hall of Fame.
Never. Speaking of Hall of Fame, a guy that I thought should have been in the Hall of Fame is Donnie Shell. When you talk about statistics and just hard-nosed play, he was, what did he come as, a free agent here or a walk-on?
All black school, South Carolina State.
Right. He was an unsigned free agent, yeah.
So, I mean, here's a guy that without him, how would the Steelers have been? And he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Ask Earl Campbell if he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
and that's a good point, Chip. And people don't realize Donnie Shell has the most interceptions of any strong safety in NFL history, over 50 interceptions, and that wasn't his strong point. His strong point was knocking people out. It's a shame.
He was a run stopper. He was a run stopper.
He's the second, in my opinion, he's the second greatest strong safety of all time behind Jack Tatum, who's not in the Hall of Fame either.
There's another guy. The assassin. You like all these bad guys.
As far as going back to center, for 30 years, the Steelers had the best center in the league, from Ray Mansfield up through the end of DeMonte Dawson's career.
Yeah.
They and Mike Webster in the middle, who I consider the best center of all time, and actually my all-time favorite.
And Harding wasn't bad.
Player. Now, Harding was not that bad, but
for being a guard, and
he was not
center.
the best in the league at his time.
Right.
Ray Mansfield was.
Yeah.
Mike Webster definitely
Webster
was.
head and
DeMonte
shoulders
Dawson
above
was.
everybody else. He penciled him into the Pro Bowl every year at the beginning of the season, and and he just made his trip to Hawaii.
And you talk about running the sweep, and DeMonte Dawson was great at that. But if you look back at the old '70s tapes, when you see Franco Harris or Frenchie Fuqua or whoever running the football, normally you'll see them running past people that are already knocked down, and you'll see Mike Webster 5 yards in front of them.
And DeMonte Dawson was doing that all the time. It's a shame they didn't win a championship, and you may be right that may keep him out. But he should, just because he changed the complexion of that position. Now look at these other centers.
Complexion?
Yes. How that looks. How that position looks to people outside of here.
And I tell you what, not only did in that from the 70s through the 80s and the 90s did the Steelers not have the best center in all of football, they had the best coaches in Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher.
Your plug was almost too late.
You like to poke a bear with the stick, don't you?
If you compare what all the other teams had over that time and you average them together, Chuck Noll was definitely a good enough coach to make up for all Cowher's flaws and still put them on top. And that's a very good call, Jim.
Again.
Yeah.
Well,
Weekly.
You go back to Dermontti Dawson. You say, well, it's a shame he never won a championship. If you think about the teams that Dermontti Dawson played on, thank God he never won a championship, because those would have been a laughingstock. I mean, there was. What were his quarterbacks? Bubby Brister.
Bobby.
If Dermontti Dawson could have won a championship with that team, he should have been ordained, not put into the Hall of Fame.
But he is still a good player, and if you judge by how they play, he should make it.
He should make it. That was the whole point. He definitely should make it.
Right.
But he was not on teams that were going to win a championship. It's not his fault. It just wasn't going to happen.
What else? What else for the last couple minutes?
Well, I'd like to mention a little bit about the Pittsburgh Pirates, because I know, you guys ridicule them constantly, and I'm a Bucco fan, and I've been drinking the Kool-Aid. They signed Joel Hanrahan, and they signed Charlie Morton, and
and Jeff Carson's,
and Charlie Morton, I believe, can ultimately be the star of that staff, and Joel Hanrahan is the closer that they need. Those are some pieces that they needed to have to move forward with that team, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this year. I think the Pirates are going to put a very exciting product on the field. They're going to give us another reason to be proud to be Pirate fans again this summer, like we were last. And I know you can laugh at me all you want, but I've been a Pirate fan all my life, and I'm not going to give up on them.
Let me tell you, when they signed Nate McLeod, I asked myself, what are the Pirates thinking? When they signed Joel Hanrahan, I asked myself, what's Joel Hanrahan thinking? The only thing I can think of is, okay, I'm going to stay right here because there's no pressure to win. I go out there and pitch my game, and whatever happens, happens. And with no pressure like that, you perform good, I guess. But I'm sure that any of these other teams would have been glad to overpay him. He could probably went ahead and been a Yankee this year if he wanted to.
Mike, you're on the same page as me. I have a bet with these two gentlemen here that the Pirates have another losing season for 20 years. No, it'll be the 20th year.
I agree.
I'm
with you on that.
Okay.
I tell them no.
You took that bet?
Guinness Book of World Records.
Somebody's got to go out there on the line, because you know what? When the Pirates turn it all around, you're going to be back on the bandwagon.
Well, I'm a Pirate fan, but I still think they're going to lose for the 20th time and set the North American record for the most losing sports franchise in history.
Okay. They already did.
I just Alan, you're entitled to your opinion. I just disagree.
But I'm a fan.
I just disagree.
Well, you know what?
I'm being a little dramatic, but it's again.
If you go down 51 towards as you're going past Century 3 Mall and those parking lots, my bandwagon's parked right off of the street with a for sale sign on it.
I miss
and
it.
It's for sale cheap. It's only been used once and not for very long, only for about a couple months last summer.
Yeah.
Can I have it for 85 games this year instead of the 100 that you used it last year?
But hey, as long as the Pirates have the all-you-can-eat section, I'll always be in attendance.
When we going?
Well, the benefit to the all-you-can-eat section is there's a bench right outside of the booth there where you don't even have to actually see the game. You can just sit at this table and eat.
But there's some nice teams that come into town.
You rip them all you want, but I'll tell you what, spending the night down at PNC Park, going to see a ball game, it's a nice night out. And I think the Pirates put a product out there last year that showed signs of improvement, and I look for them to continue.
It is a beautiful park. I do agree with you, but I did just get a message from my biggest fan.
Who?
The score is tied 1-1 at the end of the first with the Penguins.
All right. Keep hope alive.
Who are they playing?
I don't know.
They're playing the Carolina Hurricanes.
Hey, now that you guys think that since Hines Ward's out of here and we already had a parade in his honor for beating a 50-year-old ex-karate kid in Dancing with the Stars, do you think that the Steelers will finally get a big wide receiver, which Ben been wanting for the last 5 or 6 years? With help around the red zone, we got a poor red zone
No,
offense.
I don't think they're going to do it. They may get crazy and try to get an offensive lineman.
Like
Right?
we've said, there's not a single position that they have that they don't need somebody.
Yeah,
and you'd laugh, Al, but I'm telling you, their first round pick is going to be Cordy Glenn out of Georgia, offensive guard.
What
I
did I tell
guarantee
you?
it.
I don't believe it. But I will give you credit if they do it.
Yep. Well, Jim, who do you think? What are the Steelers going to draft first?
Well,
I mean, I know they're not going to listen to you because you always give them the right stuff and they always take the wrong stuff.
You know, Will, I think the Steelers will really, I mean, they've only drafted about 15 linebackers in the last 3 years. And then when one gets hurt, they still move Timmons from middle to outside linebacker.
How's that working out?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they draft another underachieving linebacker in the first round. I hope I'm wrong.
I don't know where to go. I'd like to see that big receiver that you talk about. That would help. But we do need those offensive linemen, so I'm looking for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round to get us a few of those newer offensive
You
linemen.
look at the way the defensive line got decimated at the end of the year. I wouldn't be too surprised if they went for another defensive lineman. I mean, Cam Hayward, I think he's going to pay dividends, but they're going to need help.
And they're already talking about moving Ziggy Hood, who's never played nose guard in his life. They're talking about bulking him up, moving him in the nose guard, which I think would be a big mistake, keeping him at defensive end. That's his natural position.
Well, I know Dick LeBeau is the master of the 3-4 defense, but, Mike Tomlin, originally came from a 4-3 defensive set. And, maybe they should, consider, adjusting the defense accordingly to what they've got. Because I don't think Ziggy Hood is a person that you want to sit there and get beat on all night. I think he's got more athletic ability and can play better at the ends than he can. Or, even as a tackle as opposed to a nose tackle.
And Mike Tomlin, like I've been saying all along, is a young Art Shell. He's just there with the coaching hat on. He came in, he inherited Bill Cowher's staff, he inherited the coaching staff, he inherited the system. So let it play out. He has no say-so on the offense. That's Big Ben and Bruce Arians, and he has no say-so on the defense. He has a little input because Dick LeBeau's nice, but he has no say-so defensively.
Well, do you think Arians...
He should be a special teams coach, maybe.
Do you think Arians will be gone?
No, Arians is going to come
They
back.
already said he's coming back.
Oh, is he?
LeBeau's coming back.
Well,
They're all
Arians
coming back.
is allowed to come back. He hasn't made that decision
Right.
yet. He wants his behind kissed again.
He
by
wants to
Ben
see how
and
many
Mike
offers
Tomlin.
he's going to get. Let me tell you right now.
Zero.
None.
Zero.
And speaking of none, that's about how much time we've got left.
Oh,
Thanks, guys. Great show. Guess we'll see you again next week. Tune in next week. Take a look. See what we have. Look for us on YouTube, and we'll see you next week.